Hello, and welcome to Forest Pathology at Oregon State University. My name is Hazel, and this video will include a number of dwarf mistletoes. Dwarf mistletoes are parasitic plants that infect host trees. And in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, the species of dwarf mistletoe is directly tied to the host species. So what I mean by that is every host species will have a different species of dwarf mistletoe that infects it. So I'm going to start off here, and I'll be showing you a number of different mistletoes. This is Arceuthobium sugens. So in general, our dwarf mistletoes are of the genus Arceuthobium, and the species name will oftentimes refer to the host species. So this is hemlock dwarf mistletoe, Arceuthobium sugens. So with dwarf mistletoes, it's usually pretty difficult to see the actual plants growing out of the stem, but you will sometimes see that. But what I would like to point out are these three little cups that you see on this stem. Those are actually signs of this mistletoe. So let me zoom back out and I'll show you some of the branch swelling that's very typical with mistletoe infection. This is a small branch, but you can still see very clearly the branch swelling here, indicating the mistletoe infection. This is a symptom of the infection. And then these little cups that you can see here are the sign of the infection. So for this class, we are sticking with this Arceuthobium sugens sort of naming, where the host is usually associated with the species name. There are other names. Taxonomy has changed over the years, but for this class, if you use this naming convention, that's totally fine. Okay. So next I'm going to show you Arceuthobium americanum, which infects lodgepole pine. So this is lodgepole pine dwarf mistletoe. Again, I'll start out by showing you the swelling. So again, you can see this branch swelling here and here as well. And then this is actually an extremely infected branch here. Let me see how much I can zoom in. Here you can see the actual mistletoe itself. So this is the plant infecting the host. And then here again, you can see the cups, plant material growing out of the branch. So again, this is Arceuthobium americanum, lodgepole pine dwarf mistletoe. All right. We're going to move on to our next mistletoe. This is Arceuthobium lyricis, or larch dwarf mistletoe. We have a number of small samples here. I have to pull it out of my storage. Okay, so here's an example of larch dwarf mistletoe. There's a smaller piece. I'll put that one under the microscope. So again, you'll see this branch swelling. Brooming is also a common symptom of mistletoe infection in many cases. Here again, you can see the plant material growing directly out of the host branch. So we have host tree branch with the mistletoe parasitic plant growing out of these bracts, these small cups. There's one sort of in the center. Okay. Let me move on to my next sample. Okay, this one doesn't have an Arceuthobium name. This one is actually Phoradendron libdicedri, and this is on incense cedar. So there we go. Again, you can see the swelling here, typical of mistletoe infection. You can see the parasitic plant material here, and then obviously the host branch here. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see host species. Helps you identify which mistletoe you have. And I'll see if I can get any magnification on this. I'm not certain I'll be able to. Oh, look at that. Okay. So on the left, you can see the swollen host branch. And then this green section, you can see the mistletoe growing directly out of the host branch. So it looks, I mean, if you were to look at this and not know what a mistletoe was, you might not even know that this was not part of the host tree. So it's really important to be able to see what these things look like so you can see what they are out in the field. Okay. Moving on to my next mistletoe. Here I'm going to be showing you a true fir mistletoe. This is Arceuthobium abitienum. So obviously referring to abies. Here you can see it zoomed out. It's a little bit harder to tell just because of the denseness of the needles, but there is swelling right here in the branch, and then the actual plant, the parasitic plant material is growing there too. And I'll zoom in on that more so you can see that. So this is a true fir mistletoe. So here you can see the plant material. You can see the basal cups, sort of empty, missing the, here's an example of the basal cup right there. And even if that's just growing out of the branch, that is still enough of a sign for you to submit as a samples for your disease collection. It just needs to be obvious what the host species is, because again, the host species is tied so directly to the species of mistletoe. Okay, and then our last sample is Arceuthobium campylopodum. This is ponderosa pine dwarf mistletoe. So I'll show you again, sort of zoomed out. You can see the branch swelling here. And then if I flip over, here you can see the parasitic plant, the mistletoe itself. And then I'll try to zoom in. Another great example of basal cups. There you go. You can see a number of basal cups growing out of the stem, and then some amount of plant material. So there are a lot of dwarf mistletoes that infect a lot of the species that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. I haven't necessarily shown you all of them, just some of the samples that we had here in the forest pathology lab. So if you find a dwarf mistletoe and it's not one of the ones I've talked about, that's totally fine. Just make sure you have evidence of the host species, and then you will be able to identify correctly what dwarf mistletoe is infecting your specimen, your disease collection. So again, these are dwarf mistletoes. Many of them are Arceuthobium species, but there is the infant cedar mistletoe, which is Phoradendron libocedri, or libocedri. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you for watching.